Hello and welcome to this short video on revision strategies for exams at university. This is the second of two short videos from the Learning Support team at Cardiff Metropolitan University, so if you haven't already, we would advise you to watch the video on exam preparation first. The tips given in this video on revision strategies will assume that you have already done the preparation for your exams and that you're now ready to start your revision. Strategies that work for you. With any learning strategies, particularly revision, it's vital that you find approaches that work for you. It's much easier to form productive habits of learning if the strategies you're using are enjoyable and make sense to you. So, before you begin your revision, have a think through your current ways of learning and make a note of the ones that work for you. Revision also works best if you try a few different approaches. Here are some ideas to consider for making your notes. Do you prefer using a simple pen and paper? A blank Microsoft Word document that you can add notes, images and links to as you go along? Do you like using mind maps? These can be on paper or you might have some software for mind mapping. There are other types of software you might have, such as note-taking software or the various programs in Office 365 and Apps Anywhere which you have access to as a Cardiff Met student. You might like using post-it notes which you can stick up around your room. Try using colourful pens, pencils and papers to colour code your revision notes. You might prefer to have all your notes on a tablet. You could also consider reading your notes onto a recording device, which could just be your phone, and then you can listen back to the notes if you like to hear information out loud. Consider your workspace. For many people, in order to work well, their workspace needs to be tidy, comfortable, and free of distractions. Before you begin your revision, spend a little time finding and preparing your space for work so that it is a good environment for learning. You might prefer to work in a quiet space on campus or in a library, if there is space available. However, for online exams, it is worth remembering that you're likely to be taking the exam from home, so identifying a good workspace at home is also really important. As well as thinking about your preferred way of making and going over notes, give some consideration to the things that help you concentrate. Again, this is individual to everyone, and what works for one person won't work for another, so it's crucial that the strategies are your own. In terms of staying focused and engaged on your revision, do you prefer to just write everything down and then read it over? Is it better for you to just sit and listen to lecture recordings without the pressure of having to take notes at the same time? Is it more useful to make brief notes of things that are useful? For example, bullet pointing the key points or putting individual ideas onto post-it notes or a mind map? Is it useful for you to note down points that you're not sure of to look up afterwards? To help maintain concentration, is it helpful to move around so that you don't get bored or distracted? Have you considered doodling or using a fidget toy while you listen back to recordings or read through your notes? Is it important for you to have a drink and snacks to hand so that you don't get distracted by being hungry? Some people find body doubling really helpful for staying focused. Body doubling essentially means having someone with you while you work. This can be physically in the room or remotely on a video call. If you think this might be helpful for you, see if you can arrange to link up with other students and revise at the same time, and this can help you create a productive routine and schedule. Are you someone who likes to have sound on in the background to help you concentrate? This could be music, the TV or the radio, or even white noise, and some people find this helps to keep them engaged with their work. In the first video, we already looked at the importance of organisation and how to prepare for exams, and there's a checklist of questions to ask yourself when you're preparing. The main questions you need to ask yourself when organising your revision are: how many exams will I have? How many topics do I need to revise? How much detail will I need to know? As already mentioned in the other video, the main places to look when you're working out how many topics you need to revise are your module handbook, the lecture slides, notes and recordings, and past papers, which many lecturers and tutors will make available to you so that you can prepare for your exam. Once you've made some decisions about your revision materials, think about how you're going to approach your revision and form habits that work for you. Some key advice for your revision is: do little and often. It's better to revise in small chunks of time and to go over information a number of times rather than to try to cram it all into 1 or 2 revision sessions. Going over information a number of times will give you opportunity to process the information, and then you will be more likely to be able to recall it in the exam. Practice. As already mentioned in the first video, practice answering exam questions under timed conditions and in the same format they'll be in your exam. That way you become familiar with the process of the exam, which will help you to focus on your knowledge of the subject. If you have a spoken exam, usually known as a viva or a viva voce, it's really important that you practice speaking about your topic because it can feel very different to writing down your answers. Practice speaking to a friend or family member about your subject and get them to ask you questions so that you can practice answering out loud. Prioritise. You may have a number of topics that you need to understand for your exam and a number of exams. When you're making your revision schedule, make sure to allocate time to all of the topics. Prioritise the ones that you are less confident with or that you will be expected to know more detail on. You'll need to activate your learning in order for the information you're revising to become more memorable. All too often, revision is boring and feels like a chore. For example, you might sit down to revise and just end up reading through large pieces of text without really understanding it, or simply copying down lots of information without selecting the important points. This will make it much harder to remember the important details of your topic. Revision needs to be active in order to be effective. Finally, as we've already been looking at, make your revision multi-sensory, meaning that you should try using a range of different strategies and senses to develop a meaningful understanding of your subject, rather than always just trying one way of learning information. In order to be organised and to revise little and often, it's a really good idea to make a revision schedule so that you can make sure you have enough time to revise each of your topics a few times each, as well as practice some exam questions. There is a basic weekly planner which you'll be sent if you've accessed this video, but you may prefer to make your own version which works better for you. When you're filling in your revision schedule, make sure that you're realistic, specific, and flexible when planning your time. It's very easy to ignore or get fed up with your plan, so start with something that you can stick to and that you feel you are in control of. There's an example here of the sort of things you could plan for on your schedule, but you might want less or more detail on your own planner. We would advise that, as well as planning for revision sessions, you also plan in breaks, meal times, leisure and social activities, and that you allow yourself contingency time for unexpected things that might come up. If you're someone who ends up feeling guilty if they don't stick to the plan, then allow yourself some flexibility from the beginning. If you miss a revision slot, then allow yourself to reassign the time to another slot. Also, consider giving yourself rewards for sticking to the plan. This might be allowing yourself an hour on social media or playing your current video game. If revision time feels like a punishment, then you are much less likely to get the most out of it. When you're allocating your revision times, consider when is a good time for you to learn. When are you at your best? Are you a morning person? Do you prefer afternoons? Or are you more of a night owl? Ask yourself, how long can you work for efficiently? There's no point in trying to work for 6 hours solidly if, for the last 3 hours of that, you're losing focus and concentration. Most of your time and energy will be wasted. A lot of research has been done into the optimum amount of time for learning. For some people, it's best to work in 25-minute blocks. For others, 40 minutes is great. Some people might be able to work well for an hour. What is important, again, is what works for you. At the end of your time slot, make sure you take a break away from your revision. Make a cup of tea, go out into the garden, chat to a housemate for 5 minutes. Your brain needs time away from a revision too. We've mentioned a few times about the usefulness of past papers when you're revising, so here are some tips about how and why past papers can help support your revision. Firstly, you can use past papers to help you identify any gaps in your current knowledge and to prioritise these gaps in your revision planning. Therefore, it's useful to make notes at the end of the past paper to help you plan your next revision session. Do the past paper under time conditions so you get used to how long each question takes and how much information you're able to write within a given time period, or how many multiple choice questions you can answer. Make a note of how long each answer takes you so that you can plan your exam time based on realistic timings. Include the planning of each answer within the time for the exam and practice the plan as well as the answer. In order to avoid your revision being a passive activity in which you're just trying to force information into your memory, find ways to make your learning active. This will make it much more likely that the information will become meaningful and therefore easier to remember. When you start each 25 or 40-minute block of revision, ask yourself some focused questions. Firstly, ask yourself, why am I learning this? Why is this information important to my subject? What questions am I trying to answer with this information? Set yourself specific goals within the short block of time. Summarise information in your own words. Think of several examples and contexts for the topic you're learning about. Explain what you have learned to someone else, again in your own words. Synthesise and make bullet points as you revise. This gives you something brief to go over the next time you look at that topic. If your habit with revision in the past has been just to write out information over and over, try introducing some strategies which involve different senses and approaches to learning. Layering information using different modes of learning can be a much more effective way of getting information to stick in your memory. Here are some things to try if you haven't already. Use flashcards with bullet points, pictures, or small chunks of information which you can use to test yourself. Record your notes on your phone and listen back to them. You could even record information and leave gaps for you to say the answer when you play it back, so that you're actively participating in the revision process. Ask a friend to test you or see if you can explain something to them in your own words. If you can explain something clearly to someone else who is unfamiliar with your subject, it will show that you have understood the topic really well. Set up a study group so that you can share tips and resources with other students. Working together with others can help with your schedule and can give some accountability to your working. Use post-it notes and put them up around your house or room. Move around them and interact with them, again making your revision active. Use colour coding for themes and topics. This can make creating notes more fun, but can also make the information more memorable. Mind maps are a great way of using a variety of strategies and senses in one place. They're also a great way of organising subtopics and ordering information in a visual and memorable way. There are some great mind mapping softwares which allow you to put audio files, pictures and web links all in one place, but you might also prefer the simple paper and pen version of mind mapping. Mind maps can be colourful and vibrant and creative, or they can be clean and simple and logical. Use them in the way that works best for you. A very brief note on mnemonics and memory tools. You might have come across tips and tools for helping improve memory, such as a memory palace or using a rhyme to help you remember more complicated details. The essence of this type of memory tool is that you use existing knowledge to help you to learn new information. Typically, the type of information you might try to remember using these tools would be details such as name and dates, or the different steps or stages in a process, or the different parts, characteristics, or mechanisms to a larger system. If this is the type of information you need to learn for your exam, consider trying some of these techniques. There's loads of information and guided examples online to help you give this a go and see if this would be something you would find useful. To summarise, when undertaking your exam revision for university exams, our top tips are: Make a plan that works for you and stick to it as best you can. Revise little and often. Make your revision active rather than passive. Practice your exam and prioritise the topics you're less confident with. Use a range of multisensory approaches to help deepen your understanding and memory of your topics. We hope these 2 short videos on exam preparation and revision have been helpful to you, and good luck with your exams.